Something happened to Snow in the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes that transformed him into the tyrant that he eventually becomes. Snow's transformation into a merciless tyrant leads into a fan theory that I read that stated that Snow's brain was altered by the snake that had bit him in District 12, that it was a mutt that Dr. Gaul had sent there to bite Snow. But that didn't fit for a few reasons. One, when Snow gets back to District 12, the doctor looks at him and tells him that the snake had no fangs. It wouldn't have been able to hurt him, and that his reaction to the snake bite was caused by panic. So even if the snake had some kind of a drug that it put on Snow that would be absorbed through the skin, it still seems highly implausible that this was what transformed Snow, because he'd been losing touch with reality and morally degrading before he encountered the snake. He was already searching for Lucy Gray and considering killing her just before the snake bite happened. 2, that would be leaving a lot to chance on Dr. Gaul's end. She would be relying on others to plant the snake precisely where it needed to be, and that Snow would indeed find it. That's just too much chance for someone who calculates so much. But I do think something happened to Snow. So let's start with Clemensia. She's an excellent case study of what Dr. Gaul can do to the brain. So here is how Clemensia is described pre-snakebite. Clemensia was popular with both students and faculty, and her niceness excused a lot. She said the Hunger Games were sickening to watch. She said it was gruesome to have betting on the games. She shook her head in exasperation at the insistence of it. Clemensia and Snow lie to Dr. Gaul, and she's bitten. From there, she becomes a different person, and not in a good way. She isn't happy, she confronts Snow, and she snaps at other mentors. Even though there is a huge plinth prize to be had if her tribute wins, she's harsh and judgmental of her tribute, and she refuses to feed her tribute when she had opportunities because he hadn't done anything quote-unquote exceptional in her eyes. The other mentors are urging her to feed him, and she really should have. Even though Reaper didn't hide in the tunnels much like the other tributes, he could have gone into the tunnels at any point, and she might not have had another opportunity to send him food or water for a day or two, as we saw with other tributes. Snow even says Clemensia wasn't herself. Maybe the snake venom had altered her brain. After Snow rescues Sejanus from the arena, they go to Dr. Gaul's lab. Despite his protests, they stuck an IV in his arm to rehydrate him and deliver some cocktail of drugs. And I think that was it. He was given a psychotropic drug, something that would alter his brain, because the next paragraph we read, the pain eased in his arm, but he did not feel the velvet curtain of morphling draw around him. Some alternative drug must have been administered, because if anything, his mind felt a heightened sharpness, and he noticed everything, from the weave of the bedsheet, to the tug of the tape on his raw skin, to the bitter taste the metal cup of water left on his tongue. I think the drug is slow acting, gradually molding him over time, because Snow still doesn't like Dr. Gaul when he meets her shortly after getting the drug. I also think that the drug wasn't designed to make Snow like Dr. Gaul, but to twist him into thinking like Dr. Gaul. From there, he spends a lot of time mentally moving back and forth between the right thing and the wrong thing. For example, he had a lot of anxiety and mixed feelings after he'd recorded Sejanus with the Jabberjay. He'd wondered if Sejanus would die, but then talked himself into believing that Sejanus would face consequences that wouldn't lead to his death. He went back and forth on his love for Lucy Gray and what his motives were for loving her. Mostly it was a horrible relationship that was more about him owning her, and he ultimately tries killing her. By the end of the story, we discover that he wants to marry someone he hates so he'll never be manipulated. At the end, he looks back and feels Lucy Gray had manipulated him. In essence, he thinks love is manipulative. Now, Clemensia and Snow were likely subjected to different substances because they had different symptoms, with Clemensia becoming more like a snake on the outside, while Snow became more like a snake on the inside, with possible surgeries later that could explain why Katniss says Snow has snake-like features in the original trilogy. But it's worth noting that Clemensia came around quite a bit after some time, but Snow never did. I I think Snow, after losing his family in the dark days and having a class act grandma who was spewing and singing hatred, he already had more hatred in his heart than Clemensia did, and it was therefore harder for him to move forward. Snow is a narcissistic, fear-driven character who either doesn't know how to forgive or chooses not to. Through the whole book, he tells you constantly about his fears. Due to the traumas he's experienced during the war, he feared starvation, poverty, and losing loved ones, like his mother. He fears going through the dark days again. It controls him. He fears starvation and poverty. He fears love, and that someone he loves could die, like his mother had. Because he'd already grown up having so many primitive fears molding his mind and heart for so long, he succumbed to the drug's effects, letting it shape him into an eviler person and further distorting his view of the world. In the end, he believed himself the hero, the one who would take the hatred and blame to ensure survival, because he became convinced that district citizens were animals who would overthrow decent society if they weren't controlled. He'd continue the games, of course. When he ruled Panem, people would call him a tyrant, iron-fisted and cruel, but at least he would ensure survival for survival's sake, giving them a chance to evolve. Snow had been successfully molded into the leader that the capital's corrupt system would want for Panem's president. So what were your thoughts on Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes? What do you think about the drug that was injected into Snow when he was in Dr. Gaul's lab after rescuing Sejanus? Do you think it was just a normal pain reliever? Or do you think that Dr. Gaul injected him with something more to mess with his mind? I could be wrong, but just the way his brain changed, like the way his senses changed after the injection, I had to think something more was going on. And it does seem to fit the best after reading the book through a couple of times, but of course, leave comments with your thoughts. I love reading everything that you all write. And we are competing right now against AI channels and bots. So if you want to help a human out, please give this video a like, share it, subscribe if you enjoy the content. Thanks for watching, and keep weaving the threads of your stories.